The entire basketball world is going to be talking about Kaden Boozer this season. They'll also tell you about Isaiah Evans, incoming freshman Dame Sarr. They're going to get the majority of the headlines. But what about some of those sleepers on Duke's roster? Who's really going to be able to take Duke to the next level, being a true threat to win the national championship?
Hi, everybody. Dick Vitale. Hey, make sure you listen, man. The Locked On Blue Devils with J.J. Jackson. He's awesome, baby.
You are Locked On Blue Devils, your daily podcast on the Duke Blue Devils. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello, everybody. Welcome into another episode of the Locked On Blue Devils podcast. My name is J.J. Jackson. Today is Tuesday, August 19th, 2025. Locked On Blue Devils is your one-stop shop where we discuss everything going on inside the life of Duke athletics. And today we're going to talk a lot about Duke basketball, some sleepers on the roster this season. Also in the final segment, I want to highlight just some sleepers in general that we've seen play for Duke in the last 5 years or so. So we'll have that conversation with our good friend Kevin Connelly from Ball Durham as he joins us on the program here today. If you have not done so already, please be sure to follow and subscribe to Locked On Blue Devils for free, wherever it is that you get your podcasts. Also, be sure to watch us each and every day on YouTube. We're getting closer and closer to celebrating that 4,000 subscribers milestone, and it's all thanks to you guys here on Locked On and the everydayers who make this possible each and every day. So continue to spread the word about all the great things that we're doing here with this podcast, again, available for you each and every day. Thank you for making us your first listen each and every day. Follow us on X at LO_Blue Devils. We're on Instagram and Twitter as well. Find Locked On Blue Devils. So without further ado, let's bring him on into today's program. My friend, your friend, Kevin Connelly is here with us today on the show. Both of us are sporting our favorite Major League Baseball teams as we get going here today. In August, Kevin, slowly but surely we'll get these fall sports up and running, right? But for now, we're repping those MLB teams.
JJ, it's been a tough year for you. I've been thinking about you a lot when I watch your Atlanta Braves. Things have not gone well for them, and things have not gone well for me recently either. But I think the Yankees are going to make the playoffs, and I think your Braves are already looking towards next year.
Without a doubt, man. So let's talk about happier things. Let's talk about some of the sports that are right around the corner. We're now 9 days away from Duke football's first game of the season against Elon, which means we're closer to the start of the Duke basketball season. And I really want to talk about some of the sleepers that we might find on the Duke basketball roster because, Kevin, we'll start here. This Duke team will have no shortage of headlines for a player like Kaden Boozer, a player like Isaiah Evans, and I even want to throw Dame Sarr into the mix as well.
Yeah, I 100% agree with you, especially on the Kaden Boozer and Isaiah Evans point. But when you look at a guy like Dame Sarr, and by no means am I saying he's going to be a sleeper heading into this season, but I feel like he's kind of flying under the radar. You're not hearing as much about him from these summer workouts, at least. And I mean, I kind of expected that. I've expected him to take some time to learn and grow and develop, being an international player, coming over to the States and playing college basketball, at least for this season. Obviously, we don't know what his future holds, but he'll play at least one season of college basketball. So, yeah, I mean, I don't think there is as much buzz around him as there are some other players. And probably there's a little bit more buzz around some players that we're going to categorize as sleepers than there is Dame Sarr. So, he's probably one of the biggest players I'm watching entering the start of fall practice in a couple of weeks here as well, just to see if things start to pick up with him. And once the scrimmages roll around in about 2 months' time already, if you can believe it or not, I think both scrimmages are mid to late October. So he's kind of one player that I'm really going to be focusing on entering the fall. But I'm excited to dive into some of these players that maybe fans don't have the highest expectations for this year.
Yeah, I think, look, we're talking sleepers on the program today. And no, we're not talking about what you do at the end of the day when you close your eyes and you catch some Z's, right? Hopefully this Duke team is prioritizing their sleep and they're well rested throughout the course of the season. Sleeper, also the name of a very popular fantasy football app and platform that's out there. Not talking about any of this. Here we are in 2025, Kevin, and what I've done for our great audience here on the program is I've asked ChatGPT, of all places, here in 2025 to define sleepers in sports for us. So here's what we're looking for. In sports, the key characteristics of a sleeper are undervalued, high upside, overlooked and ignored, late round / undrafted status and breakout potential. In sports, a sleeper is a player who is overlooked and undervalued, but expected to significantly outperform their average draft position or rankings by achieving a breakout season and becoming more successful than anticipated. So, fun to add the AI element there. But if people are like, what in the world are they talking about? That's it. The kind of breakout potential guys, undervalued, who we're not talking about as much, Kevin. So looking at this Duke basketball roster, who do you first want to highlight in this regard?
This is tough because there are certainly players that maybe aren't getting enough hype, or we're talking about enough, that are going to be in the rotation. Look at a guy like Nick Kamenia. I think we talked a lot about him early in the summer because he was playing with Team USA and what he was able to do. But once he got back to campus, didn't talk about him as much. I still think people aren't talking enough about a guy like Pat Gongba, who I think is primed for a monster sophomore season. I'm going to go with this first pick, JJ, and I don't know who you're going to pick. I'm going to go a little bit off the radar, and it could be a total whiff, and he doesn't get a lot of playing time. I'm going to stick with the freshman class, and I'm going to say Sebastian Wilkins.
I love it.
I'm going to say Sebastian Wilkins because when he's on the floor, I don't think Duke is going to look for him necessarily to score the basketball. I think they're going to look for him for athleticism. I think they're going to look for him for defense. Now, remember, he is a reclass guy. So he has had the body of what you would think would be someone going into their senior year of high school, but his body is kind of really developed for a freshman, and he has a strong athletic build. So I'm going to go with a guy like Sebastian Wilkins, and it's a little bit of a risk and a gamble to say that for a sleeper because very well you could look up at the end of the season and he only averaged 5 to 7 minutes per game.
Yeah.
But he's one guy that I'm very interested in. And if you're looking for that type of a long shot to be who's somebody we're not talking a lot about that could find themselves on the floor for double-digit minutes per game, I think Sebastian Wilkins is one of those guys.
I think he absolutely qualifies. So I'm happy to start the conversation there because he is undervalued. He is kind of the last addition that Duke had in that recruiting class, and adding to the roster came down to Duke and Maryland, and we get Wilkins to commit, and we're already seeing some crazy impressive athletic dunks and highlights. I've been impressed by some of the three-point shots that we've seen him display. Again, who knows what the minutes per game element kind of looks like for Sebastian Wilkins once those games get started. But other than that, I think that is kind of an awesome way to kind of look at Sebastian and what he can be able to bring to this Duke basketball team. Any final thoughts there on Sebastian Wilkins before we get to the next guy?
Yeah, I think we should hop on to the next guy just because I don't want to push it too much. Because, like I said, there is that question mark of how much is he going to play, and I think a lot of that does depend on the rest of the backcourt. We've already highlighted what Caleb Foster is, the expectation for him, and kind of his struggles last year, and how is that going to translate into this year. We talked about another guy in the freshman class and a guy like Cayden Boozer, and how is he going to translate to the college game. So I think a lot depends on two of those players primarily to see how much time Sebastian Wilkins gets this year.
Okay, yeah, you're queuing me up. I do want to talk about Cayden Boozer because I think he is one of the absolute biggest sleepers on the Duke basketball team. Undervalued for sure, and I want to be able to tell you why after we take this first break here on today's episode of Locked On Blue Devils. Hang on with us. Locked On Blue Devils here today is brought to you by our friends at Drip Drop. If you're trying to stay on top of your routine, whether that's workouts, long days on campus, or staying focused through back-to-back classes, hydration is where it all starts, and that's where Drip Drop comes in. When I'm on top of my hydration, I notice everything works better, from my energy to my mood, my focus, and so much more. Drip Drop is a doctor-developed and scientifically proven for fast hydration. It uses the perfect balance of sodium electrolytes and glucose to help your body absorb fluids quickly, delivering 3 times the electrolytes and half the sugar of a leading sports drink. Drip Drop is the absolute go-to each and every day. They sent us some product individually. I am all about the watermelon flavor. Right now, Drip Drop is offering Locked On listeners 20% off your first order. Just head to dripdrop.com and use promo code LOCKEDONCollege. That's dripdrop.com, promo code LOCKEDONCollege for 20% off. Stock up now before the heat hits too hard. Drip Drop is a proud sponsor of Locked On Blue Devils. Another sponsor here on the show today is our friends over at Prize Picks. This episode brought to you by the daily fantasy platform that lets you turn your football predictions into real rewards. Preseason's already heating up. College football's not far behind. In fact, week 0 games get started this weekend. Whether you've got your eyes on big-name quarterbacks or breakout running backs, Prize Picks makes it easy to get in on the game. Super exciting picks to be aware of and players within Prize Picks right now. I think Joe Burrow, Saquon Barkley, Josh Allen, all of these guys at the NFL level are able to make things happen. Prize Picks is simple to play. All you got to do is pick more or less on 2 to 6 player projections. If you get your picks right, you can cash in and win up to 2,000 times your money. Download the Prize Picks app. Use code LOCKEDONCollege to get $50 in lineups after you play your first $5 bet. That's code LOCKEDONCollege to get $50 in lineups after your first $5 play. Prize Picks, run your game, a proud sponsor of Locked On Blue Devils. Okay, my man Kevin Connelly's here with us today. We're talking about some sleeper candidates on this Duke basketball team. And in particular, I want to talk about Kaden Boozer, the twin brother of Cameron Boozer, who is going to have no shortage of headlines surrounding his name with how well he's projected to be a college basketball player this upcoming season. You cannot use the term undervalued, at least right now, for a guy like Cameron Boozer. I think you can start to do that for a player like Kaden Boozer, given the position he's coming into, the experience that Caleb Foster's already got, and a lot of people kind of pigeoning or putting him behind Caleb Foster to start the year. And that's a guy like Kaden Boozer, who I think is going to make a big time impact for Duke this year.
Well, no, he certainly could, JJ, and I think a lot of people share the same sentiments that you do, and especially with what we're hearing coming out of these summer workouts that wrapped up about a week ago, and how good he was in those summer workouts. Now, yes, it is controlled settings, and they are running 5-on-5 to an extent with a GA or a walk-on on one of the 5-on-5 teams. But I think there's a lot to like about Kaden Boozer's game. I think there's a lot of room for him to grow. I think when you look at him and his brother throughout their high school careers, they've won everywhere they've been, whether that's been on the AAU circuit or in just regular high school basketball. And I think they played EYBL down in Florida. So yeah, I think there's a lot of room for him to grow. I think it's going to be good that he's going to have a chance to play a little bit early on. And I think his playing time, like I said, with Sebastian Wilkins, and like I've said in the past, is going to be dictated on how well Caleb Foster plays this year. If Caleb Foster steps in from opening night and looks like the trusted, valued point guard that everyone is expecting him to be, I think Kaden Boozer might not get as much time early on in the season as some might hope. And I think that's a good thing for Duke, right? You want Caleb Foster to play well. You want that veteran junior leadership as your point guard. But for Kaden Boozer, I think he has the potential to really steal some minutes away from a guy like Caleb Foster and prove that he could be the starting point guard or starting backcourt duo of a national championship caliber team.
I'm thinking about, the quotes that were given by John Shire to John Rothstein throughout the course of the summer about Kaden Boozer leading this team in assists and being more of a traditional point guard and that sort of thing. I think what's going to surprise people is the offensive game scoring-wise that you might be able to get out of Kaden Boozer as well as a plus. I'm thinking about some big-time games, Kevin, and going back and reading about the Chipotle Nationals championship game where it was Kaden Boozer, not his brother Cameron, but Kaden, who scored a game-high 27 points to give Columbus the victory, the national championship over Dynamic Prep. So in big-time games, there is a track record of Kaden Boozer being able to step up and score the basketball, dude.
Yeah, and kind of when you look at it, and I've talked about some concerns or at least questions I have with another freshman and like Dame Sarr trying to adjust coming over to the States to play college basketball. And obviously I've documented the same with Caleb Foster here. I mean, if any of those two guys struggle, I mean, you would think Kaden Boozer is going to slide right in there and take some of those minutes. Because I think Duke is really set in the front court with Isaiah Evans, Cameron Boozer, and Pat Gongba. And then obviously you have a guy like Malik Brown, who's going to be back there as well once he gets fully healthy, recovering from his shoulder injury. So I think it's really interesting when you look at a player like Kaden Boozer. And, I mean, if he can be a scoring player off the bench, if he can provide a scoring punch coming off the bench, that only makes Duke deeper, and that makes Duke a better team.
I'm thinking, or I'm looking here at the, again, 27 points game high in the victory over Dynamic Prep to win the 2025 Chipotle Nationals. They played Brewster Academy, Kev, in the semifinals, and it was Cayden Boozer, not Cameron, Cayden, who hit the buzzer beater to win the game and send them to that title game. So shout out to Cayden, man, for making these big time plays when the game's on the line and you need somebody to step up in those moments. That's awesome.
Yeah, these two brothers, they're winners. They know how to win. And Duke is hoping that translates now to college.
All right, here's another sleeper to touch on today with Duke basketball in this 2025-2026 season. Let's talk about Malik Brown, who's coming off of the shoulder injuries that he sustained throughout the course of last year. Transfers in from Syracuse. It was his first season playing for Duke in the Final Four team that just wrapped it up this past season. Now he's got one more year left. He's going to be a senior, and you start to think about Duke on the interior, and a lot of people are very high on Kaden Boozer, and rightfully so. You talked about the upside and buzz that some might have right now for somebody like Pat Gongba, and given the injuries for Malik Brown, maybe you're not thinking as much about him and how he could factor in to the Duke basketball team. But what a dynamic player he is, bro, and he immediately comes in, gets deflections, he gets all these steals and rebounds, just an all-around really awesome player, I think, for Duke.
Well, yeah, I think he falls into the category of a sleeper because he hasn't been on the court since last March, right?
Yeah.
Because he's underwent shoulder surgery for his double shoulder dislocation that he suffered in February and in March last year. So I think that's how he falls into the category of a sleeper. But and I also think you could probably add to it when you look at the stats, nothing pops out to you, right?
Sure.
Was he like 3 points a game, 4 rebounds? But when he's on the floor defensively, you know it. And he's kind of a player like I could compare to Sebastian Wilkins, where the stats might not be the greatest thing in the world, but you know their presence when they're out there. And I think that's what Duke is hoping for Sebastian Wilkins this year. And I still think that's the expectation once Malik Brown gets out there. And I do believe he will be fully cleared for contact once official practice begins in a couple of weeks now, when everyone gets back on campus for the start of the fall semester. So yeah, I understand why you put him as a sleeper, but I do think that injury designation and not seeing him now since last spring in the Final Four is a big reason why you can categorize him as a sleeper.
I'm looking at his game logs from last year, right? To think about those big scoring out nights, and obviously you could find tons of games where Malik Brown had 4 or 5 steals, had blocked shots, was getting rebounds, doing all those things. But you were spot on, Kev. I mean, he averaged 2.5 points per game, 3.7 rebounds in 26 total games on the season. His season high scoring was just 8 points twice on 2 different occasions, and he finished 4 of 12 shooting from 3-point range. That's an element of his game that John Shire wants to explore a little bit more. I would have sworn that there was a 10 or 11-point game, something like that, last year for Malik Brown, but that's probably just me being optimistic and wanting to hype up my guys a little bit more than reality. But yeah, man, just 8 points twice. I think we're going to get a double-digit scoring game at some point this year for Malik Brown. He's got to do it at least once playing for Duke. He scored 26 as a Syracuse player at Duke, man. We need kind of one of those big-time scoring games from Malik Brown.
Yeah, well, certainly he's capable of it, but that's not what he was asked to do.
Yeah.
Duke has plenty of scoring.
Fair.
They have plenty of firepower scoring, so he's going to do the dirty stuff. He's going to do what he's asked to do. And if he's asked to put up 15 points in a certain game, I think he has the potential to do it.
All right, well, let's go ahead and we'll take a break. We've been talking about this 2025-2026 team. On the other side, let's just have some fun on this Tuesday. To wrap up today's show, let's look back at this decade that we're currently in. Who are some of those biggest sleepers that you might be thinking of since 2020? So we'll do that conversation in just a moment. Locked On Blue Devils here today, brought to you by a brand new sponsor, Open Phone. If you're running a business, every missed call is money left on the table. Think about the last time you needed a service. If the first person didn't answer, did you wait? Probably not. You moved on. That's why you need Open Phone, so you never miss an opportunity to connect with your customers. Open Phone is the #1 business phone system designed to streamline and scale your customer communications. If you juggle 2 phones just to keep business and phone calls separate, Open Phone solved that instantly. Over the last couple of years in my personal life in the business space with the company, I was able to use Open Phone. I have firsthand experience, and I think it's incredible. There's an AI agent that handles after-hour calls, answers common questions, and captures leads so you never miss a customer again. So why over 60,000 businesses trust OpenPhone? You'll be able to see why. They're offering Locked On listeners 20% off your first 6 months at openphone.com/lockedoncollege. That's OPENPHONE.com/lockedoncollege. Openphone.com/lockedoncollege. They'll even port over your existing numbers for free. OpenPhone, no missed calls, no missed customers. A proud sponsor of Locked On Blue Devils. Okay, we go forward. It's our last segment here today on Locked On Blue Devils. A shout out to all of the everydayers out there that make us a part of your day. Be sure to comment in this video below what you think about sleepers for the 2025-2026 season. And then let's have some fun here. Since 2020, other sleepers within the Duke basketball program. I've got one, Kevin, but I actually want you to go first. We'll see what direction you go in.
I have one. I don't know if it can be considered 2020. I'm going
to take it. I'll start, and then we'll let you follow up. I want to give Wendell Moore Jr. some love for Duke basketball, man. What he was able to do throughout the course of his career, 3 seasons for Duke, ultimately becoming a captain on the squad that goes to a Final Four in Coach K's final season. He turns that into becoming a first-round draft pick himself, did the little things super well. A Final Four team that you think about Paulo Banchero, you think about A.J. Griffin, you think about Mark Williams on the inside, you think about Jeremy Roach in the NCAA tournament run that he had for Duke. But Wendell Moore Jr. was so steady throughout his entire time and career for Duke. Truly one of my favorites, a Charlotte, North Carolina native that played for his home state, Duke University. He's gotten a chance to play in the NBA for the Charlotte Hornets now. Big fan of Wendell Moore Jr. and just wanted to take this opportunity to give him some love today on the show. Give me some thoughts on Wendell.
Yeah, Wendell Moore, he was a really good player, and you kind of highlighted how he grew as a Duke Blue Devil and kind of ending that career in the Final Four, unfortunately coming to a loss, but how he was such a glue guy on this team. I was thinking, I don't think they were ever teammates. I was thinking a couple years back, and I think the ultimate sleeper, Justin Robinson. I don't know if he can be considered a sleeper.
I'll take that. I like that. Yeah.
Because he came on so late in his senior season. It's not like he was a key part of the rotation throughout the entire year, but those few weeks when he got on the court and how good of a player he was over that time, I think he was a real sleeper. I think definitely a teammate of Wendell Moore's that doesn't get talked about from that same year is Vernon Carey Jr. I think when you look at it statistically, had one of the best freshman seasons in Duke history, but because there was no postseason canceled due to COVID, didn't really get to really set his mark as a Duke Blue Devil. So I think Vernon Carey could be looked at as a sleeper, even though he was one of the best players on that team. I'm sure recently we can think of another.
I put Cassius Stanley in that conversation too, man.
Yeah,
what he was, I wish he would have played more than just the one season for Duke, but man, what an impact player.
Yeah, you look at that team and kind of crazy, right? I mean, they didn't get the opportunity to really finish the job.
Yeah, Trey Jones, ACC Player of the Year season, ACC Defensive Player of the Year. He's got Vernon Carey. He's got Cassius Stanley. It's young Matthew Hurt on the squad there with that Duke basketball team. And, man, what a fun squad that was. So kind of the big sleepers there. What about if we went the century, Kevin, or just throw out another kind of historic sleeper for Duke basketball that comes to mind?
A guy like Matt Jones. I
love it.
I think Matt Jones is kind
Good pull. Good pull.
When I say sleeper, I'm kind of going like underappreciated as well. I think Matt Jones. I think a guy like Emil Jefferson as well. Guys who weren't going to get any of the headlines in any of the articles or podcasts, if they're even podcasts back then, although it was 10, 15 years ago.
Sure.
I think guys like that who are glue guys to championship teams. And even a guy like a Marshall Plumlee. Now, Marshall wasn't as good as Mason or Miles. But I think those are sleepers and underappreciated glue guys that this Duke team has had in this last century.
Could you make a case? Here's an interesting one. I think about Sheldon Williams a lot, right? Because of his career at Duke. And obviously he is the landlord, a menace, one of the best defensive players in the sport. He was recognized as such in college basketball, but he played every single day with J.J. Redick, who was the face of the sport. And it was hated or loved if you're a Duke fan or hated by opposing teams. And then in some ways, it's crazy, but it makes it makes Sheldon Williams unvalued. Is this kind of that Michael Jordan, Scottie Pippen dynamic, so to speak, or whatever? But I just Sheldon Williams popped in my mind right now.
Yeah, I mean, he was really good. I'm just going back
So
to
good,
that. Yeah, and then you think of other players on championship teams that were kind of overshadowed. Look at a guy like on that 2015 team. I mentioned a couple already, like a Justice Winslow.
Sure.
Like you have the firepower of Quinn Cook and Tyus Jones and Jalil Okafor, and then like that fourth option
That's a good call. Yeah.
is Justice Winslow. And was he really a sleeper on that team just because of how good the other three guys were? Yeah, I mean, trying to think back to like, okay, the 2010 team, Nolan Smith, John Shire,
Kyle Singler.
Yeah, Kyle Singler. You got guys like that who are really taking a lot of the headlines. But then like, what do you got? Like a Lance Thomas,
right,
on that squad.
Yeah, did a lot of the dirty work and little things for Duke.
Yeah. Duke always has some of those guys on their really good teams that are going to do the little things, that are going to clean up down low, that are going to play good defense, that you don't need 15 points per game out of, because you have guys like John Shire and Nolan Smith and Kyle Singler to go score the basketball, because you have Tyus Jones and Jalil Okafor and Quinn Cook to go score. So I think that this team could have some of those guys, as long as the people who we are assuming are the top contributors in the Cam Boozers and Isaiah Evanses of the world are able to contribute that big-time scoring load.
All right, let us know in the comments what you think. Sleepers for this year's team and sleepers all time in Duke basketball. Let us know your arguments, and we love to see all the interaction in the comments down below. Kevin, you have a lot of great work right now going over at Ball Durham. Tell us a little bit about that and how people can support you.
Yeah, balldurham.com, all over the start of the Duke football season, obviously all over Duke basketball, as we always are. So come follow us over at balldurham.com. Give us a read every single day. We really appreciate it.
Be well, Kevin. We'll talk to you soon.
Thanks, JJ.
That's Kevin Connelly joining us here on today's episode of Locked On Blue Devils. Go follow their work again over at balldurham.com. Comment down below what you think about this video, what you like about the Duke basketball team going into the upcoming season. Excited to interact with all of the everydayers that are out there. Thank you so much for your support with what you do within the Locked On Blue Devils world. As always, go Duke. I'll talk to you again tomorrow. My name is JJ Jackson. Thank you and good day.